Yo, I'm Rob M, and a couple of months ago I got back from a really crazy cruise that went to the Eastern and Southern Caribbean. I did a whole bunch of research getting ready for this trip, and I wanted to share some of that research with y'all in case anyone's going to these places too. So if you're planning a vacation or you're already going on one and it's stopping at one of these spots, here is a boiled down version of what I did at these stops and what you could possibly do too. All of these locations are fantastic and a ton of fun, and it all started in Old San Juan was a really cool place to start the trip. It's a super historical part of San Juan and dates back to the 1500s. It sort of reminded me of New Orleans in the way that it had all these cobble streets and colorful buildings. We boarded a plane in our home state of Texas and flew across the Gulf of Mexico, landing at SJU in Puerto Rico. We then hopped in an Uber which took us to the Old Town where our hotel El Colonial was located. El Colonial was an awesome hotel. It was only 3 blocks away from the cruise port, but would also be a good choice if you're just visiting and want to check out Old Town. We really recommend checking out El Colonial. It's only about a third of the price of the surrounding resorts, the staff was great, and it's got this amazing rooftop view. Now, there is a little bit of give and take with this price, given that this building is located in the super historical area that it is. It's over 300 years old, and that means there's no working elevator. Be prepared that you might have to take your luggage up a few flights of stairs. We got a room on the 4th floor, which was great because it was super close to the roof, but also pretty difficult to get our luggage all the way up there. The plumbing is also fairly basic, however, that's just a side effect of the age of the building. Once we got settled in our room, we went downstairs and ate dinner across the street at a restaurant called La O. We really recommend this place. It was pretty awesome. They had really good drinks, and I had some of the best seafood I had on the entire trip here. It is a little pricey, however everything in Old Town is expensive given that it's all geared towards tourists. We were pretty tired from traveling, so after dinner we turned in for the night and got ready for the next day of exploring Old Town. The next morning we woke up and went to the roof and were met with the sights of the cruise ship we'd be boarding later that day. We then got breakfast, checked out of our hotel, and got ready to explore San Juan. One quick note that kind of won us some points with El Colonial: they let us store our luggage in the lobby of their hotel after we checked out. This was really helpful because we checked out in the morning and our ship didn't board until the afternoon, so it gave us a place to leave our luggage while we explored the city. We loved exploring the Old Town. There's so much to see and do, it's pretty easy to see why this is not only the place people depart from cruises, but also a stop on many cruise destinations. All of these historic, colorful buildings are really fun to look around. Also, if you're a fan of either coffee or tobacco, Old Town's gonna have a lot of options for you. Almost every corner had a coffee shop or a cigar lounge, and there were a lot to choose from. I personally tried a coffee from Finca Cilintos, and it was really good. I also stumbled across this place called Don Collins Cigar Lounge, and if cigars are your thing, this place is definitely worth visiting. Cigars aren't even really my thing, but I really enjoyed this place. Aside from all the historic buildings in Old Town, there's also Castillo San Felipe del Moro, an old Spanish fort that was one of the first things to be built in the area hundreds of years ago. The fort was super cool and definitely worth checking out. The nice thing is it's pretty easy to see. You could just walk over and see different pieces of it. We didn't have time to take a tour or anything, but we were able to walk around a little bit and we really enjoyed it. It's pretty hard to beat the view of the coast in this area. After wandering around Old Town for the day, we made our way to the cruise port and got ready to board our ship. By the end of the day, we were setting sail and saying goodbye to San Juan. We had 2 days of sea ahead of us, and then we were arriving at the first stop on our trip, Cartagena, Colombia. All in all, San Juan, Puerto Rico was awesome, and we could easily see someone making an entire vacation around this destination. After 2 very relaxing days at sea, we woke up hundreds of miles away from Puerto Rico in the port of Cartagena, Colombia. Now, I can't really speak for the rest of Colombia, but I will say that I think Cartagena, Colombia is a bit safer than most people would assume. Not to say that it's completely safe there, or that you shouldn't use the common sense most people use when they travel, but if you know where you want to go ahead of time and you do your research, you should be okay. From the research I did at the time of filming this video, it's my understanding that this area and this area are pretty safe, including Old Town. This area where the cruise docked is a bit of a so-so area, so I probably would stay out of this area at night. However, all the other areas are labeled as unsafe, and it's generally not recommended for tourists to go in these areas. We spent the first 2 hours of our day in the Cartagena cruise port, which is pretty crazy because most cruise ports are kind of terrible. Most ports for cruises are kind of tourist traps. They're usually full of duty-free shops with overinflated prices and tons of vendors that want to make money off of you. But not Cartagena. This place is essentially a giant open-air zoo with tons and tons of animals. Anything ranging from macaws, oscars, iguanas, anteaters, or peacocks. If you're someone who loves animals, then I would definitely recommend carving out some time for this place. You can get up close and personal with all the parrots and animals, and you can even buy bags of seed and feed them to the parrots. If you're lucky enough, you can also convince one of them to get on your arm. However, you do have to be careful because these are wild animals after all. And if you plan on exploring Cartagena, there's a currency exchange you can use there to get some Colombian pesos. After hanging out with all the birds, we got a taxi and went to the Old Town. You definitely can't tell from my little video here, but the traffic here was insane. Nothing like I've ever seen before. before. If you plan on renting a car in Cartagena, good luck. I honestly do not recommend it. Just plan on taking taxis because the traffic situation here is just crazy. Our taxi dropped us off at the walls of Old Town. However, we wanted to make a little detour. We wanted to go try the first thing you think of when you think of Colombia. I mean, the first legal thing you think of when you think of Colombia. Coffee. I had done some research about a popular coffee spot nearby. Our detour led us through Parque Centenario, which was a really cool place. There were a lot of really pretty monuments here. What's also cool about this place is that there's a family of sloths that live in the trees. However, when we were there, we couldn't really check them out since every tree seemed to have a vendor around it, and the vendors wanted you to pay to take pictures with the sloths. After about a 10-minute walk, we arrived at the coffee shop that I had done research on, Libertario Coffee. This place was fantastic, and if you're planning a trip to Colombia and want to try some true, authentic Colombian coffee, Libertario Coffee Roasters is the place to go. This is also not a bad place to buy bags of coffee beans if you're looking to take some home with you. After we had our coffee, we made our way back to Old Town to do some shopping. Right off the bat, we quickly found that the most popular thing in Cartagena seems to be emeralds. I don't really know anything about emeralds or how much they cost, but I kind of got the vibe that if you're looking for good deals here, you're gonna have to go pretty far into Cartagena. Around dinner time, we started looking for a place to eat. There were a lot of options, both expected and unexpected. Are you ready for authentic Colombian cuisine?
I've literally never had KFC before.
We ended up choosing a Peruvian restaurant called Encanto in the lobby of a hotel, pretty close to where our taxi dropped us off at the front of Old Town. We really enjoyed this place, the food was awesome, and so was the service. The prices were not bad either. Afterwards, we called it a day and got a taxi back to the cruise port. All in all, Cartagena was a really cool spot, and we highly recommend checking it out. If you have a cruise that goes here, you definitely gotta get off the boat, you definitely gotta check the place out, don't be nervous, it's totally worth it. Our next stop was on the desert island of Aruba, and we had a lot of stuff planned. We woke up super early and took a taxi over to the northwest side of the island to visit the Aruba Butterfly Farm. This place was super duper cool and kind of an essential stop for anyone visiting Aruba. Now I will say, if you do plan on going here, try to get there as early as possible. We got there at about 9 in the morning, which is absolutely worth it because butterflies are the most active in the morning. Walking around this sea of well-kept plants, blooming flowers, and tons of butterflies everywhere was just super cool. At face value, you'd think that the butterflies are really the only attraction of this place, but honestly, the well-kept plants and flowers are also just as much worth seeing. This place was so beautiful that walking around it felt very dreamlike. After spending about an hour and a half in the butterfly garden, we left and walked to get some very mediocre breakfast tacos. Hard to recommend any food spots in this area since it's where all the resorts are, so a lot of the restaurants feel very tourist trappy. After breakfast, we took a taxi over to one of the best spots to go snorkeling in all of Aruba, Mangel Halto. Boy, my research did not disappoint on this one. Mangel Halto had to be some of the best snorkeling I've ever done. It's a quaint little beach tucked into some mangroves with a really beautiful coral reef about 30 to 50 feet off the coast. Now, if you plan on visiting this place yourself, here's a few tips. There's a lot of reasons Mangel Halto was a great place to go snorkeling, but one of them is because it kind of caters to all skill levels of snorkelers. You could kind of divide this area up into a beginner's section, an intermediate section, and an advanced section. This area over here is the beginner's section. The water's really calm over here, and it's great for anyone who's new to snorkeling. You won't see any coral, but you'll see lots of fish. You can also get in over here, which is kind of considered the intermediate zone, and you can also get in here, which is kind of considered the advanced zone. My understanding is that these zones are divided up like this because of how much you have to swim to actually get to the coral reef. We decided to get in over here and had about a 30-meter swim before you could get out to where any coral was. Most of the coral is over here. You can also get in over here, but I believe it's advanced because the water's deeper and the current is stronger. Aruba is very windy, so it's always best to check the conditions the day you plan on going snorkeling. You definitely don't want to go snorkeling on a day where it's too windy here because the water will bat you around and it can be pretty dangerous. But once you get out to these coral reefs, you're in for a treat. I mean, just look at this. After 2 beautiful trips out to these reefs, we decided to head back in town to get some dinner. This was the point in our visit where we realized we really wished we had rented a car for Aruba. There weren't any taxis readily available at Mangel Halto, and honestly all the taxis we took in Aruba were really expensive. It would have just been cheaper to rent a car. Once we got our taxi, we had it drop us off a few blocks away from the cruise port at a restaurant called West Deck. We actually would have had a lot more food options if our ship didn't stop at Aruba on a Sunday. Many of these Caribbean islands treat Sundays as holidays, so if you have a cruise that's going to a Caribbean Caribbean island on a Sunday, expect a lot of the businesses to be closed. We enjoyed our dinner at West Deck and really enjoyed the view and the service. The food was okay, but the pricing was pretty insane. After dinner, Reagan realized she had a sunburn, which is honestly a staple of Aruba. Aruba is so bright and sunny that it's really easy to get a sunburn here. Luckily, their biggest export is aloe vera, and they have these aloe vera shops everywhere on the island called the Aruba Aloe Company. These products are definitely not cheap, but it is the highest quality aloe vera products I have ever seen in my life. I'd say that high price tag is worth it, and if you're visiting Aruba, definitely check this place out. After a very eventful day, we finished up and headed back to the ship to get ready for our next stop. Aruba was a really gorgeous place. It has the tagline, "One Happy Island," which is pretty easy to see. It's hard to imagine being unhappy living in a place as beautiful as this. Our next stop was a few miles east at the island of Curaçao, and we really had to rush. We had a lot more time in the last two stops at Colombia and Aruba. The ship stayed till midnight. However, here in Curaçao, it was only staying till 4 p.m. With only an 8-hour window on this island, we went ahead and rented a car online ahead of time. We definitely recommend renting a car for Curaçao. It's much bigger than Aruba and doesn't really have the infrastructure to have taxis running all over the place. Because we had booked the rental a few weeks ahead of time, the process of getting off the boat and into a rent car was like 15 minutes. Driving around Curaçao is also really fun. There's a lot of cool stuff to see and it's a pretty island. While there's a lot to see and do in Curaçao, we had come to do more snorkeling, just like we had done in Aruba. These Western Caribbean islands are fantastic for snorkeling and diving. As you can see from this little map that I made before we had gotten there were a lot of places we wanted to see. I knew ahead of time that this was way too many places to see in one 8-hour day, but it goes to show that there's a lot to do at Curaçao if you really like snorkeling or diving. The first place we decided to check out was way at the top of the island at Playa Pescado, because we had heard online that this was a good place to see green sea turtles. After a nice 45-minute drive where we almost got stuck only one time due to the tiny rural roads getting wiped out by rain, we made it. And honestly, after we experienced Playa Pescado, we really don't recommend it. The parking situation here is a nightmare. There was basically nowhere to park, and we almost had to turn around and leave if it weren't for a nice dude selling coconuts who let us have his spot. However, once we got out and started checking out Playa Pescado, we noticed that it was kind of a bummer, and it was mainly due to those green sea turtles. In my research online, I had read that this was a good spot for green sea turtles because this is a fishing dock, and a bunch of fishermen like to come in and throw all their scraps off the boat, and it attracts all the turtles. That was a little bit misleading. The locals have actually turned this place into a tourist trap where they endlessly dump fish off the side of the dock to attract the turtles. It doesn't sound bad until you get in the water and see the turtles for yourself. The turtles here seemed really fat, slow, and lethargic. They seemed somewhat devoid of purpose, as they no longer had to hunt for their food and just got to eat endless fish all day from the locals. I mean, look how obese this turtle is. I never once in my life thought I would see an obese turtle. Personally, what I would recommend if you really do want to see turtles in Curaçao is just check out one of the spots on the map I had shown earlier. There are so many good places to go snorkeling in Curaçao, and green sea turtles are actually native to the island. After we'd finished up at Playa Pescado, we drove about 12 minutes south to Playa Lagoon. This place was gorgeous, and I had read online that this place had some really good snorkeling, and my research did not disappoint. The snorkeling here was actually a bit different of an experience than the day before in Aruba. The water was a lot deeper, calmer, and there seemed to be more fish than coral here. This spot was a great place to see giant schools of fish. If you're on the lookout for the swimming through an aquarium experience of snorkeling, this would not be a bad spot. There were also scuba divers there with us, which made sense. If scuba diving is your thing, Curaçao is a great place to go. We stuck mostly to the inside of the cove here. However, near the end, we swam over to this right wall where the water got a lot deeper and we saw a lot of really cool fan coral. Once we had finished snorkeling here, we were reminded of the incredibly short 8-hour window we were given on this island and realized that we only really had time to stop at one more spot on the way back. So we hopped in the car and drove about 25 minutes south to Playa Puerto Marie. Now, I might not have done the best job in this video so far showing it, but Curaçao is really well known for its beautiful, picturesque beaches. There was only a small $6 fee to get in, and it was totally worth it. We spent as much time as we could here and then very begrudgingly went back to the car. Curaçao was an awesome stop on the trip. It was very diverse, and we got to do a lot of different things while also still feeling like there was tons to still do if we ever came back. It was sad to leave Curaçao behind. However, we were also excited for the next stop on our trip. We spent about a day and a half embarking north by northeast to visit the least visited island in all of the Caribbean, and personally our favorite island on the entire trip, Dominica. Unlike the terrain of the last 3 stops, Dominica is 290 square miles of mountainous jungle. This island is so small that the place where the cruise docks isn't even a cruise port and actually just dumps you off into the capital city of Roseau. This is a great place to buy souvenirs, and the merchants you meet here will be some of the coolest, nicest people ever. Now I can't stress this enough, but if you're visiting Dominica, you have to take an excursion. Mainly because this place is gorgeous and you can't really see it unless you go into the jungle and just see it for yourself. Also because I think while it is possible to rent a car here, you really wouldn't want to. There's essentially one tiny little rural mountain road that snakes through the whole island, and honestly I don't think you'd want to drive on that. For this stop we decided to try a third-party excursion through the shore excursion group called Jewels of Dominica. I'll put a link in the description below of this exact excursion in case you watch this video and want to check it out for yourself. We met up with a group of about 6 other people and jumped on a bus that took us through the rest of Roseau and up into the jungle. We first stopped at Tito Gorge, which is this big famous gorge in the middle of the jungle where they filmed one of the scenes from Pirates of the Caribbean. Here at this place, you jump in the water, swim through the gorge, and make your way up to these really cool waterfalls that are within the gorge. This place was beautiful and super unique, but the water was a bit too cold for me. There were also a ton of tourist groups all here at once, and it made it really difficult to navigate through the place. I think this stop would be a lot cooler if you could somehow guarantee that there weren't going to be a lot of other tourist groups when you visit. We left Tito Gorge and headed to our next spot on the trip, but on our way there, our van stopped at a local fruit stand, and it was kind of an eye-opening experience. They call Dominica the Garden Island because just about everything grows here. Our tour guide was telling us the only thing they don't grow there is apples. It's for this reason that you have to try the produce when you're in Dominica. The bananas and pineapples that we had at this little fruit stand were the best fruit I have ever had in my entire life. Like hands down. After the fruit stand, we stopped at arguably one of the most beautiful and pristine stops on the entire trip, Trafalgar Falls. I've heard a lot of people refer to Dominica as the Hawaii of the Caribbean, and honestly these 2 waterfalls give you a pretty good idea of why people say that. The next stop on our excursion was a sulfur spring nearby. These sulfur springs are these big bubbling cauldrons of water that are heated from geothermal activity from beneath the island. Now you do have to be careful and watch your step while visiting because this water is literally boiling. One thing you should know before visiting this place is that it is a sulfur spring, so you will be able to smell it before you can see it. At the end of the excursion, we stopped at this beautiful scenic area that overviewed the capital city, Roseau. We honestly loved this excursion. It went to so many gorgeous places, but it wasn't only good because of the places we went to, but also because of our tour guides, Vivi and Big Mama. They were both incredibly nice, super informative, and if you do take this excursion, you should ask for them because they're really, really cool. Once we got back to the boat, we wanted to go shopping at the local markets, but we didn't have enough time. Instead, we walked down the street and went to a local supermarket that was right next to the cruise port. Shopping at local supermarkets is definitely something that I'm going to try to do in the future because it gives you a good exposure of what the locals actually eat there. And it was also really cheap. All in all, Dominica was easily our favorite stop on the entire trip. It was really, really special, and if you ever get the opportunity to visit Dominica, it is absolutely worth it. I could not recommend it more. The next day, our ship took us to the beautiful island of Antigua. We loved how pretty Antigua was, and it has an abundance of beautiful beaches to choose from. We got off the ship and snaked our way through the relatively standard, small cruise port on a Caribbean island. Personally, not a lot to see here. There were a lot of aggressive vendors and people trying to get you to sign up for excursions. We walked out of the cruise port and found ourselves a taxi. Now, the original beach we wanted to go to on Antigua was called Half Moon Bay. It was this really pristine, remote little beach on the other side of the island. However, once we arrived at Antigua, we realized that we were either going to have to take the public bus or a very expensive taxi to get to that beach, and it was on the other side of the island. After a bit of impromptu Googling, I changed our sites for Friars Beach. However, our cab driver Johnny let us know about a different beach a little bit more north from that one called Valley Church Beach. We were really glad that our cab driver recommended this place because it had a bit more infrastructure like chairs, tables, and a bar. That being said, you really can't go wrong with any beaches on Antigua. They're all really pretty, and Valley Church was no exception. We were able to grab a table and a chair for $20, grab a drink at the bar, and just sit back and relax. After a super relaxing day, we got back in our taxi and headed back into town to do a little bit of shopping before we got back up on the ship and got ready for the last stop on our trip. Our last stop on the trip saw us at the nearby island of Sint Maarten, which reminded us a lot of Antigua in the sense that it was just covered in beautiful beaches. However, unlike Antigua, it was a little bit smaller and had more mountains. One interesting aspect of this island is that it's actually split in half, with one side being Dutch and the other side being French. If you have a cruise visiting Sint Maarten, then you'll be docking on the Dutch side, as the French one doesn't have any cruise ports. At this stop, we wanted to try a first-party excursion with the cruise liner Virgin. We did our best to sort of try everything in terms of excursions on this trip. Sometimes we took taxis like in Cartagena and Aruba. In Curaçao, we rented a car. In Dominica, we took a third-party excursion. And here, we took a first-party excursion. We'd kind of hoped that after trying all these, we would have a definitive answer as to which was best. But really, the main conclusion we came to is that it just depends on where you're going. We woke up real early and met up with our excursion group on the ship, and then were led single file off the boat and onto a bus. Our bus took us a short drive northwest to Rainforest Adventures. This place was super cool, and it had a ton of iguanas at the entrance. We got in line and took a ski lift halfway up the mountain for the first ride. This ride is essentially a damp AstroTurf track that goes down the side of the mountain. They plop you in a big rubber tube and push you down the track. This ride is a bit short and kind of lackluster in my opinion, but the fact that it's halfway up a mountain in the Caribbean is kind of hard to beat. I'd say this one is kind of worth skipping, however, I think most of the tickets for the attractions at this place bundle the schooner ride with it, so I mean, if you're getting it bundled in for like $10, then it's fine. Afterwards, we took the ski lift back up to almost the top of the mountain for the first of the 2 zip lines that they have here called the Century Hill zip line. Sadly, they didn't let me take my GoPro on the ride, so we can all thank David Jealous for this footage. After finishing up, it was time for the main attraction. We hopped on a ski lift that took us the rest of the way up to the very top of the mountain. Once you get to the top, you're met with these extremely scenic and gorgeous views of the entire island, and this is also where you get in line for the world's steepest zip line, the Flying Dutchman. The line for the Dutchman does take a long time. We were up there waiting for about an hour and a half, but the views are hard to beat, and there's also a little bar up there you can use to kill some time. The zipline itself was insanely cool. It was remarkably smooth for a zipline that goes down the literal face of a mountain. If you're someone who's not really a thrill seeker, or maybe you're scared by heights, this might be a good introductory experience to kind of get you out of your comfort zone. The ride moves really fast, but like I said, it's remarkably smooth, and even though it looks really scary when you're about to go down it, it is super fun. The zipline conveniently takes you down to the bottom of the mountain. After we landed, we got in line for the bus and headed back to the ship. We had a little bit more time left in the day, and there's a lot of really pretty beaches in Sint Maarten that we wanted to check out, but with this being a 10-night cruise, we were pretty tired and wanted to go back and rest. All in all, Sint Maarten was a fantastic place to end the vacation. After we got back, we spent another morning wandering around San Juan before we went back to the airport and flew home. San Juan was a great place to both start and end the cruise. There's just so much to do. Little piece of advice too, we didn't have a hotel to leave our luggage in the second time in San Juan, and we ended up getting a bounce luggage locker service, which worked out pretty well. So that's everything we did on our Southern and Eastern Caribbean cruise. It was a ton of fun, and we couldn't recommend it more. I never really mentioned it, but the cruise liner that we took in this video was Virgin Voyages, and you know, small point there, but they're great. I really, really recommend checking them out. But hey, if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed it, and maybe I will make more travel content in the future. Take it easy.